This week, we'd like to share a story with you about a guy who encountered issues with his mental health and what he did about the situation. Let this serve as a beacon for any of you out there who may be struggling yourselves and not know what to do about it. We will be publishing more stories in the coming months. If there's anything you'd like us to specifically cover, please let us know in the comments. Let's get into it. The Apartment Light, a mental health survivor's tale. Eli was 26 when the world started losing its shape. Days didn't come one after another anymore. They smeared together like wet paint. The only thing that marked time was the hum of his computer, the one constant, the low electric sound that filled the air even when everything else went silent. He worked remotely, though worked was becoming a stretch. Deadlines slipped past. His inbox bloomed with unread messages, subject lines that felt like accusations. His boss checked in twice, first with concern, then with a tone that hinted at finality. After that, nothing. He didn't leave the apartment. Groceries were delivered, the dishes stacked until mold grew in the corners of the bowls. He began to move through the rooms like a ghost. No sound, no destination, just existing out of habit. Sleep came in fragments. He'd wake at 2 a.m., the walls pressing inward, shadows whispering the same thoughts that gnawed at him by day. You're wasting everything. You're a disappointment. You're not built for this world. He stopped answering texts from friends, even the simplest messages. Hey, how are you doing? Felt unbearable. What could he say? That he'd spent the afternoon sitting on the kitchen floor staring at the wall? That the act of showering felt like scaling a cliff? Sometimes he'd stare at his reflection and feel detached, like the man in the mirror was someone else wearing his exhaustion. Then one night something cracked. He woke to find himself sitting on the bathroom floor, his back against the tub, not remembering how he got there. The apartment was silent except for the faint buzz of the light overhead, flickering, rhythmic, almost mocking. He realized he hadn't eaten in over a day. His hands were trembling. He whispered aloud, I can't do this. And then softer, but I don't know how to stop. He didn't know what moved him to reach for his phone that night. Maybe it was instinct, some buried part of him refusing to go completely under. He searched, mental health hotline near me. The voice that answered wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was human, calm, steady, and patient. They talked for nearly an hour. He didn't say everything, just fragments. I feel like I'm falling apart. I don't know why I can't fix it. I don't want to keep feeling this way. The person didn't tell him it was okay, didn't promise miracles. They just said, you don't have to go through it alone. That was enough to get him through the night. The next day, he booked an appointment with a therapist. It took him 2 tries to show up. The first time he canceled at the last minute, pacing in his apartment with guilt clawing at his throat. The second time, he sat in the waiting room with shaking hands, staring at a plant that looked too alive to belong in that gray space. The first few sessions hurt. Therapy was like peeling off old bandages he didn't realize he still wore. He talked about burnout, the pressure to be productive, the fear of being ordinary. He talked about loneliness, the kind that eats sound, the kind that makes you forget you exist outside your own head. It wasn't cinematic, there were no epiphanies, just slow work, tiny, almost invisible steps, making a list of things to do each morning, eating 1 real meal a day, letting light in through the blinds for an hour, even when it made his eyes ache. Months passed. There were setbacks, nights when he thought about giving up again, days when the apartment light still felt too harsh, but gradually the silence inside him began to thin. He started walking in the evenings, short walks at first around the block. He'd watch people moving through the world, laughing, holding hands, carrying groceries. It was painful to see at first, but it also reminded him that life was still happening, even if he'd forgotten how to be part of it. One day, he bumped into an old college friend, Maya, at a cafe near his apartment. She looked surprised. Eli? Wow, it's been forever. He almost lied and said he was fine, but instead he shrugged and said quietly, it's been a rough year. She didn't ask for details, she just nodded and said, I get that. They sat for an hour, talking about nothing and everything. When he got home that night, he realized it was the first time in months he'd laughed without forcing it. That night, before bed, he turned off all the lights except one, the small lamp by his desk. It cast a warm, uneven glow across the room. For the first time, it didn't look oppressive, it looked like something alive. He sat there for a long while, not doing anything, just breathing. He knew he wasn't cured. Depression didn't vanish. It waited, quiet and patient. But he also knew something else now, that there was a way through it, even if it was slow, even if it was messy. As he looked around the apartment, cleaner now, faint music playing, a half-finished cup of tea beside him, he realized the air didn't feel heavy anymore. The world hadn't changed. He had just enough to keep going. And that, he thought, might be enough. It didn't happen all at once. Healing rarely does. In the weeks after he started therapy, Eli's apartment still looked the same, cluttered, gray, tired, but inside that stillness, small movements began. The first thing his therapist asked him to do was deceptively simple: keep a routine. It sounded childish, but it became his anchor. Every morning, no matter how late he'd gone to bed, he forced himself to open the blinds. The sunlight felt harsh at first, stabbing through the dust, but he let it in anyway. Sometimes he just stood there for a minute, eyes closed, breathing in that thin warmth, a reminder that the world outside still existed. Then came food. He began cooking again, nothing elaborate, eggs, toast, pasta with jarred sauce, but the act itself was grounding. He'd forgotten how the smell of garlic sizzling in a pan could make an empty space feel alive. Cooking became his small rebellion against the numbness. Next was movement. He started walking each evening, around the block at first, then farther. At first it was just to quiet his racing thoughts, but eventually he began to notice things again. The sound of kids playing somewhere down the street, the way the streetlights buzzed when the air got cold, the stray cat that seemed to follow him halfway home. It was mundane, but it mattered. Every step reminded him that he could move, through space, through fear, through his own mind. Therapy continued. There were days he said nothing, just sat in silence, staring at the carpet. His therapist didn't rush him. She'd just ask, "What's happening right now inside your head?" And slowly he began to answer honestly. "I'm scared I'll end up like this forever. I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time. I don't know who I am without my sadness." Naming the feelings didn't fix them, but it loosened their hold. They stopped being shadows in the dark and became things he could point to, things he could learn to live with. He started journaling. At first his pages were angry and disjointed, just scribbles and fragments of thought, but over time, the chaos gave way to reflection. He wrote about small victories, did laundry today, went outside for an hour, didn't cancel therapy. They seemed trivial, but they marked a slow return to life. And then came people. Maya, the friend he'd run into, began checking in once a week. Sometimes they'd grab coffee, sometimes just text about a show they were both watching. He didn't tell her everything, but her presence reminded him of something he'd forgotten. That connection didn't have to mean performance. It could just be quiet companionship. He started reaching out to others too. An old roommate, a cousin he'd lost touch with. Some didn't reply, some did. It didn't matter. The act of reaching out itself was part of the healing, proof that he still wanted to belong somewhere. He also found an online support group, a small community of people who talked openly about depression, medication, recovery. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outlier. He learned to say the words he'd been afraid of. "I'm struggling. I need help. I'm trying." Months turned into a year. The fog didn't vanish, but it thinned. The panic attacks came less often. When they did, he knew what to do. Breathe, ground himself, wait it out instead of fighting it. His job changed too. He left the marketing firm that had drained him and took a part-time role at a local library. Less pay, less pressure, but more peace. He liked the quiet hum of the place, the smell of old pages, the slow rhythm of people coming and going. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. And then, one late afternoon, something happened that marked the quiet turning point. He came home from work, set his bag down, and realized the apartment was clean. The dishes were done, the air didn't smell stale, the blinds were open, and the sunset light painted the walls gold. He stood there, just looking around, and felt it, a flicker of contentment. Not joy, not yet, but something gentler. Peace, maybe, or relief. He made a cup of tea, sat on the couch, and let himself simply be. That's when he noticed the lamp by his desk. It had always been there, a cheap, dull thing, but in that light it looked soft, almost beautiful. He thought about how much time he'd spent trapped under that glow, sinking into darkness. Now it was just light. Nothing more, nothing less. He smiled. Eli knew the darkness might return someday, but he also knew now that he could survive it, not through strength or heroism, but through the smallest acts of living, opening blinds, answering messages, breathing through fear, making tea. He was still here, still moving, and that, he thought, was more than survival. It was a beginning. If anything in this story resonates, please leave a comment below. Thank you all for watching. See you all next time.